Hi, computer science students. Here is your crash course in everything you need to know about arrays this unit. We begin with what an array is. An array is a collection of stored items, a list of items. Okay, so I have two arrays here, and you'll see that they follow a similar structure in that you use square brackets around your list and you separate each item by a comma. The first variable I have is a list of strings. The second variable is a list of numbers. So you can use different variable types in your list. What I love to do when I am coding is use console log statements to show me what the computer knows about my variables. What is the value of those variables? And so here you see that I console logged out drama SDFs, and it gives me the array, the list of strings, and it actually gives me more information. It tells me the length, how many items are in this list. Same thing with my X values variable. There are 5 items in this list, and here they are. So that's what an array is. Another real important part about an array is how to identify each element in an array. And for this, we use index to reference these items. The first item of any array is always index 0. So what you're going to see in line 22 is I put a text command instead of console logged, I switched to text. It said, show me on the screen the name of my array, square bracket, the item at index 0. And that is rent because that is the first item in our list. So you can see I go through using the same syntax to display all items in the drama SDFs array. Now, out of curiosity, what would happen if I tried to display item at index 4? And there is no fourth one because it's 0, 1, 2, 3. And let's display this at 250, so down below that 4. Is it going to display anything? Is it going to break? Oh, it just totally ignores it because there's nothing at index 4. Let me get rid of this. Next up, there is this helpful method to quickly identify the length of your array because your array might be growing or decreasing in size depending on what you do with your array. And so here we have drama SDFs dot length. Dot length is the method that you can add to the end of your variable name, and it'll tell you the length of your array. It says 4, right? This one is easy to count, so it's silly to use dot length to show that we can calculate it, but your array, again, might be changing in size, so it's helpful to have dot length as a reference point. Now, we're going to use dot length in a loop. We're going to put loops and arrays together. I have a new array, and we're going to iterate through this array. Let me comment out these console logs so we can focus on this new array called Lag Studios. You're going to notice that I didn't use a var for Lag Studios, and that's because I already declared it outside of setup because I'm going to reference it in functions beyond setup. So I need it to be what we call a global variable. I need every functions to have access to Lag Studios. So I said, I'm going to have I declare it up here. And I say it equals right now an empty list. There's nothing in it, but know that this is going to be a list, or more specifically, not specifically, or using our vocabulary, it's going to be an array type. And here are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in my list that I add on line 31. Now here is how we use a for loop to iterate through a list. And that means to go through a list one item at a time. We declare a variable. I'm going to use the default I, started at 0. Say as long as I is less than the length of a list, and go up by 1 each time. Console log out what I is, right? It's going to start at 0 and it's going to go up until we hit the length of the list. And console log out what is at the array at that index. And then I added this line just to separate each time we loop. And when I run my code, you will see that when I is 0, the element at Lag Studios 0 is art, right? We knew this, 0. The element at Lag Studios 1 is dance. And then we go through the loop again and I goes up. And now we're at 2. 2 is drama. The item at 3 is instrumental, and so on. This is a very common loop structure for our arrays, because what you want to do is the index is always one less than the length of the list, right? The length of this list is 6. It shows me right there in that. But the last index is 5. So I want to go as long as I is less than the length of the list, go through each item. I am going to ignore this for now so I can go on to updating a list. Here, we're going to go through, we're going to iterate over the array again of Lag Studios. And instead of console logging, in fact, I'm going to get rid of that because we don't need to console log out. Get rid of all of that. I'm going to have it console log out the original list here in setup. And then on mouse clicked, I have a for loop that's going to go through the array and add an exclamation point to the end of each item. So here I say that array at this index is now equal to array at the index plus an exclamation point. And when we have strings, that means concatenate, that means put them together, and then show me the list, the new list. So I'm going to run this and click on the screen, and you're going to see there's still 6 items. I'm not changing the length of the list, but there's an exclamation mark being added each time I click to this list. Okay, so those are a couple of examples of for loops and using them to iterate through a list. And now let's go. What I skipped over is I think you will have fun creating lists that have random numbers in them that might set random positions of things on your canvas. So here I'm going to create a random array, and what I did at the top, again, is I declared this array already. I set it to be nothing. And now I'm going to use a for loop and go through this for loop 10 times from j being 0 to j being 9. And push on. This dot push means add to the end of my array whatever is in parentheses. And what's in parentheses is rounding a random value between 0 and 400, the dimensions of my canvas. And then console log out, show me this list. So if I run it, I will comment this out, not to confuse the Lag Studios. And you can see I have a list of 10 random numbers. I can easily make this list, let's say, of 100 random numbers. And here we go. There's 100 random numbers. Now let's go back down to 10 and show an example of not concatenating strings, not adding an exclamation, but going through a list using the for loop and saying, for every item in this list, add 2 to it and show me the new list. So if I run, we have our starting array, and then I click and every value goes up by 2. And if I click again, it still goes up by 2 and up by 2. Right? So this might be helpful in terms of animation, or if the user does something, you want all the values to adjust in a certain way. I am now going to comment this out and do the final thing, which is adding on to an array, but not through a list to generate a random list, but adding on to an array with mouse click and just pulling in this case, mouse X. So I'm still going to start. Let me do a random array of 5 values to begin. And now on mouse clicked, I've commented out it's not going up by 2, but on mouse clicked, we're going to push on a new item to the end of the list, and that's going to be my X value, and then console log out the value of this list, or the value at this array. When I say value, I mean the variable, what is stored at this variable. So you can see I'm starting to click and the list is getting longer. And so this is where iterating through the list to increase it by 2 is helpful in this for loop, because you don't know how long, and the length of the list is changing, and that doesn't matter because this for loop is going to go through every item in the list. So let me turn this on right now so that we begin with the list, and every time I click, everything goes up by 2, and then a number gets added. Let's click again. Let me get rid of this console because that is confusing, that it console logs twice for every click. It adds a number and everything else goes up by 2. Everything goes up by 2 and it adds a number where my mouse is. And if I move my mouse over, you can see it slowly going up. Okay, so these are the basics. I labeled them 1 through 7 of things you should know about an array this unit.